What would you do if your own parents kidnapped your 7-year-old daughter and left her at a gas station just because you refused to give them $30,000? And what if I told you that $30,000 was for a cryptocurrency scheme that would later bring the FBI to my front door? This is the story of how saying no to my toxic family cost me everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and what it really means to protect the people you care about most. I used to think family meant protection. I learned the hard way that family can be your biggest threat. My name is Jessica Parker. I'm 36 years old, and I live in Naperville, Illinois, with my 7-year-old daughter, Lily. I'm a single mom running my own graphic design business from home, trying to make ends meet while giving my daughter the best life I can. Where are you watching from tonight? Have you ever been betrayed by your own family? Because what I'm about to tell you will shake you to your core. 3 months ago, my world changed forever. Not because of some random stranger or a freak accident. No, my world was destroyed by the people who were supposed to love and protect us the most. My own parents left my 7-year-old daughter at a gas station. They abandoned her there like she was nothing more than an unwanted burden. Why would grandparents do something so cruel to their own granddaughter? Because I said no. I refused to hand over $30,000 to my sister for what she called her can't miss business opportunity. $30,000 that I didn't have. $30,000 that would have wiped out everything I'd worked for since my husband died. But here's the thing about saying no to toxic family members. They don't just accept it and move on. Oh no, they make you pay, and the price they demanded from me was my daughter's sense of safety and trust. Let me paint you a picture of that day. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March, the kind of day where the sun is shining, but there's still a bite in the air that reminds you winter isn't quite done with you yet. Lily was supposed to be picked up from school by me like every other day. But when I got there, the school secretary told me something that made my blood run cold. "Oh, Jessica, your parents already picked up Lily. They said there was a family emergency." Family emergency. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut because I knew exactly what kind of emergency this was. The kind where my parents decided to teach me a lesson about family loyalty. I called my dad's phone, straight to voicemail. I called my mom. Same thing. I called my sister Kayla, the one whose business scheme had started this whole nightmare. Nothing. For 2 hours, I didn't know where my daughter was. 2 hours of calling every number I had, driving to every place I could think of, my hands shaking on the steering wheel as worst-case scenarios played in my head like a horror movie I couldn't turn off. Then, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Ma'am, this is Pastor Daniel from Shellmart Gas and Church Services out on Route 59. We have a little girl here who says her name is Lily Parker. She's asking for her mom." The 20-minute drive to that gas station was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept thinking about Lily, probably scared and confused, wondering why the grandparents who were supposed to love her had just walked away. When I pulled into that parking lot, I saw her through the window of the little convenience store. She was sitting on a plastic chair that was too big for her, clutching her purple backpack like it was a life preserver, tears streaming down her face. The pastor, a kind man in his 60s, met me at the door. "Your little girl is tough," he said quietly, "but she's been asking the same question over and over." "What question?" "She wants to know if you're coming back for her or if you don't want her anymore either." That sentence hit me harder than anything my parents had ever done to me directly. They hadn't just abandoned my daughter. They had planted a seed of doubt in her 7-year-old mind about whether her own mother wanted her. As I held Lily in my arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, trying to convince her that mommy would never ever leave her behind, I realized something that would change everything. This wasn't just about the money. This wasn't even really about my sister's business scheme. This was about control. This was about punishment. This was about a family dynamic that had been poisoning my life for 36 years, and now it was poisoning my daughter's childhood too. The pastor handed me a folded piece of paper. "They left this for you." I opened it with trembling hands. My mother's neat handwriting stared back at me. Jessica needs to learn that family comes first. Maybe a few hours of worry will teach her about priorities. Priorities. They thought abandoning a 7-year-old child would teach me about priorities. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what they couldn't have predicted when they cooked up their cruel little lesson. Their business opportunity that I was supposed to fund, the one that was going to make us all rich. The one that was so important, they were willing to traumatize their granddaughter over it. It was all a lie. A scam so sophisticated that it would eventually bring federal agents to my front door, asking questions about my family's involvement in what they called one of the largest cryptocurrency Ponzi schemes we've seen in the Midwest. And my sister Kayla, the one I was supposed to support no matter what she knew. She knew it was a scam from the beginning, and she was trying to use our family connections to hit her recruitment bonuses before the whole thing came crashing down. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before the FBI showed up, before the truth about the scam came out, before I learned just how deep my family's betrayal really went, I had to figure out how to explain to my 7-year-old daughter why her grandparents had left her at a gas station. I had to find a way to rebuild her trust in the world when mine had just been shattered into a million pieces. And I had to decide whether the people who raised me deserved to be called family at all. Stay with me, because what happened next will show you exactly how far toxic family members will go to maintain control, and how sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to walk away from the people who claim to love you. To understand how my parents could abandon their own granddaughter at a gas station, you need to understand the family I grew up in. Because this wasn't the first time they chose my sister over me. It was just the first time an innocent child got caught in the crossfire. My name is Jessica, and I'm the oldest of 2 daughters. My parents are Robert and Susan Parker. My dad worked in middle management at a manufacturing company for 30 years. My mom was a part-time bookkeeper who spent most of her energy managing what she called family dynamics. And my younger sister, Kayla, Kayla was the son that our entire family orbited around. From the time I could walk, I was labeled as the strong one. You know what that means in dysfunctional families, right? It means you're the one who doesn't get to have needs. It means when you're hurting, you're told to be strong for your sister. It means your achievements are expected, but your failures are unforgivable. I remember being 8 years old coming home with straight A's on my report card. My mom glanced at it, nodded, and said, "Good job, honey. Now go help your sister with her homework." No celebration, no proud moment on the refrigerator, just the expectation that this was what Jessica Parker did. That same week, Kayla brought home a C- in math and got ice cream for trying her best. Kayla was 3 years younger than me, born when I was just old enough to understand that my position in the family had fundamentally shifted. She was what therapists now call the golden child. Everything she did was either celebrated or excused. Every tear she shed was immediately comforted. Every failure was someone else's fault. I learned early that love in our house was conditional and finite. There was only so much attention to go around, and most of it was reserved for Kayla. When Kayla was 5 and I was 8, she broke my favorite doll during one of her tantrums. I cried, and my dad pulled me aside with that serious expression he got when he was about to teach me a life lesson. "Jessica," he said, "you're the big sister. You need to be understanding. Kayla doesn't mean to hurt things. She's just emotional." Emotional. That became the magic word that excused everything Kayla did. She was emotional when she ruined my school projects. She was emotional when she told lies that got me in trouble. She was emotional when she stole money from my birthday envelope to buy candy. And me, I was strong. I could handle it. I could always handle it. Do you know what it does to a child to be told they're strong enough to handle everything, but not precious enough to protect? It teaches you that your value lies in what you can endure, not in who you are. By middle school, the pattern was set in stone. Kayla struggled with the grades, so my parents hired tutors and fought with teachers about her needs. I excelled academically, so they signed me up for more advanced classes and told me they knew I could handle the pressure. When Kayla had friendship drama, the whole family rallied around her. When I had problems with bullies at school, I was told to work it out and not let them see it bothers you. High school was when I really started to see the double standard for what it was. Kayla failed her driver's test 3 times. Each time, my dad patiently took her out for more practice, bought her ice cream, and told her she'd get it next time. When I passed on my first try, he handed me the keys and said, "Good. Now you can drive your sister places." College application time was a nightmare. I had stellar grades, multiple extracurriculars, and scholarship opportunities. My parents were proud, sure, but their energy was consumed with figuring out how to get Kayla into any college that would accept her. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with brochures for top engineering schools spread in front of me, trying to discuss my options with my parents. Kayla walked in crying because she'd had another fight with her boyfriend, and suddenly my entire future took a back seat to her relationship drama. "We'll talk about this later, Jessica," my mom said, already moving to comfort Kayla. "Your sister needs us right now." Later never came. I filled out my college applications, alone chose my major alone, and figured out financial aid alone, because Jessica was strong enough to handle it. The most heartbreaking part, I believed them. I believed that being strong meant not needing support. I believed that my independence was a gift, not a defense mechanism. I believed that their lack of attention meant I was doing something right, not that I was being emotionally neglected. When I graduated valedictorian, my parents came to the ceremony. They were proud, they said. But afterwards, all the conversation was about how we needed to help Kayla find her path, how she was a late bloomer, how she just needed the right opportunity. Even my biggest achievements were just pit stops on the way to solving Kayla's problems. College was the first time I experienced what it felt like to be seen. Professors noticed my work. Friends valued my opinions. I met people who thought my strength was admirable, not just useful. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just the responsible one or the one who can handle anything. I was Jessica. But every time I came home for breaks, I slipped right back into the old patterns. Kayla would have some crisis, and I'd be expected to put my life on hold to help fix it. When I tried to set boundaries, I was accused of being selfish. When I tried to share my own successes, I was told not to make Kayla feel bad about herself. After college, the pattern only got worse. I started my career, worked my way up, bought my own apartment. Meanwhile, Kayla bounced from job to job, relationship to relationship, always landing back at my parents' house when things fell apart. Business venture. Number 1. Kayla wanted to open a boutique. My parents co-signed a loan for $15,000. 6 months later, the boutique was closed, the merchandise was sold at a loss, and Kayla was depressed on the couch talking about how retail was harder than it looked. Business venture number 2. Kayla discovered she had a passion for photography. My parents bought her a $5,000 camera setup and helped her rent studio space. A year later, she decided photography was too stressful, and the equipment sat in their garage. Business venture number 3. Kayla was going to flip houses. She convinced my dad to co-sign on a property that needed just a little work. 6 months and $20,000 later, they sold it for a loss, and Kayla announced she was done with the real estate. Every failure was met with comfort, understanding, and a new plan. Every time my parents would look at me expectantly, as if I should offer to help clean up the financial mess. When I didn't volunteer, I was the selfish daughter who forgot where she came from. Meanwhile, when I started my graphic design business, I did it with my own savings and a small business loan I qualified for on my own. When I succeeded, it was expected. When I struggled, I was supposed to figure it out myself. The most painful realization came when I was 28, and my business was really taking off. I called to share some exciting news about landing a major client, and my mom's response was, "That's wonderful, honey. Hey, while I have you on the phone, can you talk to Kayla? She's having a really hard time right now, and I think hearing from her successful sister might help." Successful sister. Not beloved daughter, not someone worth celebrating. Just the successful one, who could be used to make Kayla feel better about her latest failure. They said I was born with strength. But you know what I've learned? Strength without support isn't strength at all, it's just survival. And I'd been surviving in my own family since I was 8 years old. The worst part wasn't even the favoritism. It was the gaslighting that came with it. When I tried to talk to my parents about the double standards, they acted like I was imagining things. "We love you both equally," they'd say. "We just parent you differently because you have different needs." Different needs. As if Kayla needed unconditional love and support, and I needed to be emotionally starved to build character. By my 30s, I'd learned to keep my distance. Holiday visits were carefully managed. Phone calls were brief and surface level. I'd built a life where I didn't need their approval or their help because experience had taught me I was never going to get either. But here's what I didn't understand. Yet, toxic family dynamics don't just affect you. They're generational. They get passed down like DNA, infecting new relationships and new lives. I thought I'd escape the worst of it by becoming independent. I thought I'd broken the cycle by refusing to enable Kayla's failures or accept my parents' conditional love. What I didn't realize was that the real test was still coming, because when you refuse to play your assigned role in a dysfunctional family system, they don't just let you go quietly. They escalate, they punish, and they make sure you understand that independence comes with a price that in my case would end up being paid by my 7-year-old daughter. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Just when I'd accepted that I might never experience what real family love felt like, I met someone who changed everything. His name was Ethan Parker. I met him during my junior year at Northwestern in a coffee shop just off campus. I was hunched over my laptop working on a design project that was due the next morning, surviving on my third espresso and pure determination. My computer crashed right in the middle of saving my work. I might have cried right there in public if this tall guy with kind eyes and rolled-up sleeves hadn't walked over and said, "Architecture made your second table over. I know computers. Want me to take a look?" That was Ethan. He fixed my computer, saved my project, and somehow managed to make me laugh about the whole disaster in the span of 20 minutes. He was studying architecture, had steady hands that could draft perfect blueprints, and this way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Our first real conversation lasted until the coffee shop closed at midnight. He told me about wanting to design homes that felt safe and welcoming. I told him about my dream of starting my own graphic design firm. He didn't try to fix my problems or give me advice. He just listened and asked questions that showed he actually cared about my answers. For someone who'd grown up feeling invisible, being truly seen by another person was revolutionary. Ethan came from the kind of family I'd only seen in movies. His parents asked about his day and actually waited for the answer. His younger brother called him for advice, not money. Family dinners were about connection, not crisis management. When he brought me home for the first time, his mom hugged me at the door and told me she'd been excited to meet me all week. I almost cried right there on their front porch. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked later when we were alone. "Nothing's wrong," I said. "That's exactly the problem. I don't know how to exist in a family where nothing's wrong." He taught me what healthy love looked like. Love that didn't come with conditions or scorecards. Love that celebrated your successes without diminishing them. Love that supported you through failures without keeping a running tab of what you owed in return. We dated through college and moved in together after graduation. While I was building my graphic design business from our tiny apartment, Ethan was working at a mid-size architectural firm, dreaming about the houses he'd design someday. Houses with big windows and open floor plans where families could actually enjoy being together. When I told my parents I was engaged, my mom's first question wasn't about whether I was happy. It was, "What does he do for work? Is he going to be able to support you?" When I told them Ethan was an architect, my dad nodded approvingly and said, "Good. You need someone stable." They didn't ask about our relationship. They didn't ask about our plans or our dreams or whether we made each other laugh. They assessed him like a business investment, and when he passed their financial stability test, they moved on to more important topics, like Kayla's latest boyfriend drama. Ethan noticed, of course. He noticed how my shoulders tensed when my parents called. He noticed how I'd spend days before family visits preparing myself emotionally like I was going into battle. He noticed how I'd come home from those visits exhausted and a little bit broken. You don't have to keep doing this, he said one evening after a particularly brutal family dinner, where my parents had spent 2 hours discussing Kayla's need for another business loan while completely ignoring the fact that I'd just landed my biggest client yet. They're my family, I said, as if that explained everything. No, Ethan said gently. They're people who happen to be related to you. Family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down. That was the first time anyone had ever given me permission to question whether DNA was enough to justify emotional abuse. We got married in a small ceremony at a local vineyard. My parents came, of course, but they spent most of the reception talking to other guests about Kayla's latest venture into event planning. Even on my wedding day, I wasn't the main character in my own story. But Ethan was there beaming at me like I was the most amazing thing that had ever happened to him. His family was there celebrating us, like our happiness actually mattered. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. 2 years later, our daughter Lily was born. If you've ever held your first child, you know that moment when everything else in the world just stops. When you look at this tiny person who's half you and half the person you love most, and you realize your heart has grown 3 sizes in an instant. Lily had Ethan's dark hair and my stubborn chin. She had tiny fingers that gripped mine like she was afraid I might disappear. She had this way of looking at me that made me understand for the first time what unconditional love actually felt like. She's going to know she's wanted, I whispered to Ethan that first night in the hospital watching our daughter sleep in her little plastic bassinet. Every single day, he agreed, and she did. We made sure of that. We read to her every night. We celebrated her first steps like she'd just won the Olympics. We covered the refrigerator with her finger paintings and told her they were masterpieces. We created the kind of childhood I'd always wished I could have had. My business was thriving too. Word of mouth had led to bigger clients, better projects, higher rates. I was finally making the kind of money that allowed us to buy our first house, a modest 3-bedroom in Naperville, with a yard where Lily could run around and a home office where I could work while she napped. For 3.5 years, we were happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way that felt almost too good to be true. My parents showed up for the important milestones, of course. They came to the hospital when Lily was born. They sent birthday gifts. They played the role of doting grandparents during holiday visits, taking pictures to post on Facebook about their precious granddaughter. But when it came to the day-to-day realities of raising a child, especially after Ethan went back to work and I was juggling a newborn with client deadlines, they were nowhere to be found. "You're so capable," my mom would say when I mentioned feeling overwhelmed. "You'll figure it out." When other new moms talked about their parents helping with babysitting or bringing over meals, I felt that familiar pang of being on the outside looking in. But I had Ethan and Ethan's family and our little circle of friends who actually showed up when we needed them. I thought that was enough. I thought we'd built something strong enough to withstand anything. I was wrong. Lily had just turned 4 when everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning in October. The leaves were just starting to turn, and Lily was fascinated by the way they crunched under her feet when we walked to preschool. Ethan had left early for a job site inspection on a new construction project downtown. The call came at 2:47 in the afternoon. "Mrs. Parker, this is Detective Morrison with the Chicago Police Department. There's been an accident at a construction site. Your husband..." The words after that didn't make sense. Something about scaffolding collapse. Something about being taken to Northwestern Memorial. Something about getting there as soon as possible. I remember dropping my phone. I remember calling my neighbor to watch Lily. I remember driving to the hospital with my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I remember the doctor's face when he came out to talk to me. The way his expression told me everything before he even opened his mouth. Ethan died from his injuries 3 hours after the accident. He was 31 years old. We'd been married for 5 years. Lily was 4 years old, and suddenly she didn't have a daddy anymore. The first few weeks were a blur of funeral arrangements and insurance paperwork and well-meaning people bringing casseroles I couldn't taste. Lily kept asking when Daddy was coming home, and I kept trying to explain death to a 4-year-old who still believed that broken toys could be fixed with enough band-aids. My parents came to the funeral, of course. They hugged me and told me how sorry they were. They played with Lily and took pictures with her, posting on social media about supporting their daughter through this difficult time. But when the funeral was over and the casseroles stopped coming, and the reality of single parenthood set in, they disappeared again. "You're so strong," my mom said when I called crying because I hadn't slept in 3 days and Lily was having nightmares. "You'll get through this." "We know you can handle anything," my dad added when I mentioned struggling to balance client work with a grieving preschooler who suddenly needed constant reassurance. I wasn't asking them to fix everything. I was asking for help. I was asking for someone to watch Lily for a few hours so I could shower and sleep. I was asking for someone to bring dinner so I didn't have to figure out cooking while managing a 4-year-old's emotions and my own grief. I was asking to not have to be strong for 5 minutes, but asking for help had never been my role in the family. I was the capable one, the one who figured things out, the one who handled whatever life threw at her, even when life threw me the worst thing imaginable. So I did what I'd always done. I figured it out alone. I hired babysitters when I had client meetings. I ordered takeout when I was too exhausted to cook. I held Lily when she cried for her daddy, and then I went into my bathroom and cried for my husband, where she couldn't hear me. Ethan's parents helped as much as they could, but they lived in Michigan and had their own lives to manage. My parents lived 20 minutes away and showed up exactly twice in the 6 months after the funeral. Once for Lily's birthday and once for Christmas. Both times they stayed for exactly long enough to take pictures and post about being supportive grandparents. Then they went home to deal with Kayla's latest crisis. Because during those same 6 months when I was learning how to be a widow and a single mother, Kayla had decided to start her 4th business venture. This time it was a catering company, and she needed investors and emotional support and someone to talk her through her anxiety about being an entrepreneur. Guess who got my parents' time and attention? I didn't just lose my husband that day. I lost the only person who had ever made me feel like family wasn't a war zone. I lost the only person who had ever chosen me first, loved me unconditionally, and made me feel like I was worth protecting. But I gained something too. I gained a daughter who needed me to be the kind of parent I'd never had. A daughter who deserved to grow up feeling wanted and valued and celebrated every single day. Lily became my anchor in a world that had suddenly stopped making sense. She gave me a reason to get up every morning, to keep working, to keep building a life that felt safe and full of love. She taught me that being strong wasn't about enduring everything alone. It was about creating something better for the people you love most. For 3 years after Ethan died, it was just me and Lily against the world. And we were doing okay. Better than okay. We were building something beautiful together. Until my sister Kayla showed up with her cryptocurrency scheme, and my parents decided it was time to teach me another lesson about family loyalty. A lesson that would cost my daughter her sense of safety, and me the last shred of respect I had for the people who raised me. For 3 years, Lily and I had built a quiet, peaceful life together. We had our routines, our traditions, our little inside jokes that made us both giggle. Sunday morning pancakes shaped like butterflies. Bedtime stories where she got to choose the ending. Dance parties in the kitchen while we waited for dinner to cook. My business was stable, even growing. I had clients who respected my work and paid on time. We lived modestly but comfortably in our little house with the yellow front door that Lily had picked out herself. Most importantly, we were safe. Safe from drama. Safe from manipulation. Safe from the toxic family dynamics that had poisoned my childhood. I should have known it wouldn't last. It was a Saturday afternoon in February when Kayla showed up unannounced. I was in my home office working on a logo design for a local restaurant when I heard the doorbell ring. Lily ran to answer it before I could stop her. "Aunt Kayla," I heard her squeal from the front hallway. My stomach dropped. Kayla never just stopped by. In fact, I could count on one hand the number of times she'd visited our house in the 3 years since Ethan died. The fact that she was here without warning meant she wanted something. Something big. I saved my work and walked to the living room where I found Kayla sitting on my couch with Lily curled up next to her, showing her a photo album. For a moment looking at them together, I felt that familiar pang of what family could have been like if the dynamics had been different. "Hey, Jess," Kayla said, looking up with that bright smile she'd perfected over the years. The one that said she was about to ask for a favor. "Hope you don't mind me dropping by. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd surprise my favorite niece." Lily beamed at being called the favorite, even though she was the only niece. That was classic Kayla making people feel special with words that didn't actually mean anything. "Of course," I said, though every instinct I had was telling me to be careful. "What brings you to Naperville?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something really exciting." Kayla said, her eyes lighting up in a way that immediately put me on edge. "A business opportunity that could change everything for our family." Business opportunity. The same words she'd used before the boutique, the photography studio, and the house-flipping disaster. My internal alarm system started blaring. "Lily, sweetie, why don't you go play in your room for a little bit while Aunt Kayla and I talk?" I suggested. "But I want to stay with Aunt Kayla," Lily protested. "I'll be here for a while, baby girl," Kayla said, ruffling Lily's hair. "Go play, and maybe later we can bake cookies together." The promise of cookies sent Lily running upstairs, and suddenly the living room felt a lot less innocent and a lot more like a trap. "So," I said, settling into the chair across from Kayla, "what's this opportunity?" Kayla's whole demeanor shifted into what I recognized as her sales pitch mode. She sat up straighter, leaned forward, and started talking with the kind of enthusiasm that was definitely rehearsed. "Okay, so you know how cryptocurrency has been exploding over the past few years, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, all that stuff." I nodded, already feeling suspicious. "Well, there's this new company called Secure Cash that's revolutionizing the whole industry. They're not just another crypto coin, they're building an entire ecosystem, a platform where people can invest, earn passive income, and actually build generational wealth." The way she said generational wealth made my skin crawl. These were not Kayla's words. This was a script someone had taught her. "It sounds interesting," I said carefully, "but I'm not really looking for investment opportunities right now." "But that's the thing, Jess. This isn't just any investment." The founder, Marcus Chen, he's this brilliant guy who used to work for Goldman Sachs. He's created this system where early investors can earn up to 40% returns in the first year alone. 40% returns. In what universe did legitimate investments promise 40% returns? "Kayla, that sounds way too good to be true." "That's what I thought at first too," she said, pulling out her phone and scrolling through what looked like screenshots of profit statements. "But look at these numbers. These are real people making real money. And the best part is they're only accepting a limited number of investors right now. You have to be personally referred by someone who's already in the program. And you're in the program, so I am," she said proudly. "I invested $5,000 last month, and I've already made back $800. In 1 month, Jess, that's more than I've ever made from any of my other businesses. $800 on a $5,000 investment in 1 month. Either Kayla was terrible at math or someone was feeding her fake numbers to keep her hooked. "Mom and Dad are in too," she continued. "They put in $10,000 each. They're so excited about finally having a real retirement plan." $20,000. My parents had invested $20,000 in something called Secure Cash, based on Kayla's recommendation. This was worse than I thought. "The thing is," Kayla said, "and here it comes, to really maximize the opportunity you need to invest at least $30,000. That gets you into the premium tier where the real money is made. $30,000. She wanted me to hand over $30,000 for a cryptocurrency scheme that was promising impossible returns. "Kayla, I don't have $30,000 just sitting around." "But you could get it right. I mean, your business is doing really well. You could take out a business loan or maybe use your house as collateral. This is the kind of opportunity that could set Lily up for life." The fact that she was suggesting I risk my home, my business, and my daughter's security for her get-rich-quick scheme made my blood pressure spike. I'm not taking out a loan for an investment, Kayla, especially not one that promises 40% returns. That's not how legitimate investments work. Her face fell, and for a moment she looked like the little sister who used to cry when she didn't get her way. But Jess, this could be huge for all of us. We could finally have real money, real security. Don't you want that for Lily? The manipulation was so obvious it almost made me laugh. Don't you want security for your daughter, as if risking everything we had was somehow the responsible parental choice? What I want for Lily is stability, I said firmly. I want her to grow up in a house that's paid for with a mother who makes smart financial decisions. This is a smart financial decision, Kayla insisted. Everyone's getting in on this. Mom and Dad are already seeing returns. My friend Marcus has made over $100,000. His brother just bought a Tesla with his profits. Friend Marcus. Interesting how Marcus Chen had gone from Goldman Sachs founder to personal friend in the span of 5 minutes. Kayla, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I am not investing in secure cash. I'm not taking out a loan. I'm not risking my home or my business or my daughter's future for any investment that promises guaranteed returns. The room went quiet for a long moment. I could hear Lily upstairs singing to herself while she played. The sound reminded me of everything I had to protect. You know what, Jess? Kayla's voice had changed. The cheerful saleswoman was gone, replaced by someone cold and resentful. You've always been like this. Always thinking you're smarter than everyone else. Always acting like you're above the family. That's not what this is about. Isn't it Mom and Dad have been talking about this for weeks? About how you never participate in family investments. How you always act too good for whatever the rest of us are doing. Family investments. As if losing money together was some kind of bonding experience. I participate in family by being responsible with my money and taking care of my daughter. Right, Kayla said, standing up from the couch. Taking care of Lily, because you're such a perfect mother and the rest of us are just screw-ups who can't be trusted. That wasn't what I'd said, but this was classic Kayla. When she couldn't get what she wanted, she made it about hurt feelings and family loyalty. I think you should go, I said quietly. Fine, but don't say we didn't try to include you. Don't say we didn't give you the chance to be part of something big. She gathered her purse and headed for the door. But just before she left, she turned back with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Something that looked almost like hatred. You know, Jess, you can't keep shutting out your family forever. Eventually, there are consequences for being selfish. The door slammed behind her, and I stood in my living room, my heart racing. There had been something in her voice, something in her eyes that felt like a threat. That night, after Lily was asleep, I did what I should have done immediately. I researched secure cash. It took me exactly 15 minutes to find the red flags. The company was only 6 months old. The address listed on their website was a virtual office space. Their testimonials were stock photos with fake names. Marcus Chen's supposed Goldman Sachs background couldn't be verified anywhere. Most damning of all, the investment structure was a textbook Ponzi scheme. Early investors were paid with money from new investors, creating the illusion of profits, while the operators skimmed money off the top. My parents and my sister had invested their savings in a scam, and they wanted me to do the same. I tried calling my dad the next morning, thinking maybe I could explain what I'd found, help them get their money out before it was too late. Dad, I looked into secure cash last night, and I think you and Mom need to know. Let me stop you right there, Jessica. He said, his voice colder than I'd heard it in years. Kayla told us about your conversation yesterday, about how you refused to help your own sister. I didn't refuse to help Kayla. I refused to invest in something that's obviously a scam. A scam, Jessica. We've been seeing returns for weeks. Real money hitting our accounts. But you're so arrogant you think you know better than everyone else. Dad, those early returns are paid for with new investor money. It's how Ponzi schemes work. They pay the first investors to convince more people to join, and then, what, we all get rich except you because you were too stubborn to participate. I tried to explain the research I'd done, the red flags I'd found, the way these schemes always ended, but he wasn't listening. He'd already decided I was the problem. You know what your problem is, Jessica? You've always been selfish. Even as a child, you only cared about yourself. And now you can't stand the thought of your sister finally succeeding at something. Selfish. There was that word again. The same word they'd used my entire life whenever I tried to protect myself or make smart decisions. This conversation is over, my dad said. But don't think this is over, Jessica. You've made your choice. Now you'll have to live with the consequences. He hung up before I could respond. The next call came from my mother that afternoon while Lily was at school. "I'm very disappointed in you, Jessica," she said without preamble. "Your father and I raised you better than this." "Mom, please just listen to me for 2 minutes. I can show you why secure cash is—" "I don't want to hear your theories, Jessica. I want to hear that you're going to support your sister like family is supposed to do." "I am supporting Kayla. I'm trying to keep her from losing more money to scammers." "The only scammer here is you, Jessica. You're scamming your own family out of a life-changing opportunity because you're too bitter and jealous to see your sister succeed." Bitter and jealous. Of course! It couldn't be that I was trying to protect them. It had to be about my character flaws. "If you won't help Kayla, fine," my mother continued. "But don't expect to be welcome at family events anymore. Don't expect us to pretend like nothing happened when you chose money over family." I chose responsibility over gambling, Mom. There's a difference." "There's no difference, Jessica. There's just you being selfish like always. And if that's the choice you want to make, then you'll have to live with what comes next." Another threat. Another consequence for refusing to enable their bad decisions. But I thought that was it. I thought the worst thing that would happen was being excluded from family gatherings that I'd never enjoyed anyway. I should have known better. I should have remembered that my family didn't just punish people who stepped out of line. They escalated until you submitted. The final call came 2 days later while I was making dinner, and Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table. "Jessica," my father's voice was deadly calm. "You have 24 hours to reconsider your position on the secure cash investment." "Dad, I'm not—" "24 hours," he repeated. "If you won't help your sister, we'll show you what family consequences really look like." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you'll regret turning your back on family. We'll make sure of it." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, my hands shaking while Lily asked me what was wrong. "Nothing, sweetie," I lied. "Just a work call." But nothing wasn't true. Something was very wrong. My parents had never talked to me like that before. They'd never made threats that sounded so specific, so planned. I told myself I was overreacting. They were angry and hurt and saying things they didn't mean. They'd cool off, and eventually we'd find a way past this like we always did. I had no idea they were already planning to use my 7-year-old daughter as a weapon in their war against my independence. I had no idea that refusing to gamble with my family's future would cost me the thing I valued most, my daughter's sense of safety in the world. 24 hours later, I would get that call from Pastor Daniel at the gas station, and I would learn exactly what my parents meant by consequences. 24 hours after my father's threat, I thought maybe I'd been overreacting. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and life felt normal. I'd finished a client presentation that morning, responded to emails, and was looking forward to picking up Lily from school like I did every day. Lincoln Elementary dismissed at 3:15. I was always there at 3:10, parked in the same spot, watching for Lily's purple backpack and her habit of skipping instead of walking when she was excited about something. At 3:20, most of the kids had been picked up. No purple backpack. At 3:25, I got out of my car and walked toward the school entrance, thinking maybe she'd stayed behind to help her teacher or finish an art project. At 3:30, my stomach started to twist with the kind of fear that every parent knows, but hopes they'll never have to experience. I found Mrs. Chen, Lily's second-grade teacher, packing up her classroom. Hi, Mrs. Chen. I'm here to pick up Lily, but I don't see her anywhere, Mrs. Chen looked up with a confused expression. Oh, hi, Jessica. Lily was picked up about an hour ago. Her grandparents came to get her. The world tilted sideways. Her grandparents? Yes, your parents. They had proper identification and they're on Lily's approved pickup list. They said there was a family emergency and they needed to get her right away. Family emergency. The same words they'd used to manipulate the school secretary into releasing my daughter to them without my permission. Did they say where they were taking her? No, but they seemed like they were in a hurry. I assumed you'd coordinated with them. I hadn't coordinated anything. I hadn't spoken to my parents since my father's threatening phone call. They had taken my daughter without my knowledge, without my permission, and now no one knew where she was. Thank you, I managed to say to Mrs. Chen, though my voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I ran back to my car and immediately called my dad's cell phone, straight to voicemail. I called my mom's phone, voicemail. I called their house phone. It rang and rang with no answer. For the first time since Ethan died, I felt completely powerless. My daughter was somewhere with people who had threatened me less than 24 hours earlier, and I had no way to reach them. I drove to my parents' house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Their driveway was empty. No cars. No sign that anyone had been there recently. I used my old key to let myself in, calling Lily's name through every room. Nothing. The house was empty and quiet in a way that felt ominous. Where would they take her? What were they trying to prove? I drove around Naperville for the next hour, checking every park, every restaurant, every place I could think of that my parents might go with a 7-year-old. Nothing. By 5:30, I was ready to call the police when my phone finally rang. Unknown number with a local area code. Hello? Ma'am, this is Pastor Daniel from Shellmart Gas and Church Services out on Route 59. We have a little girl here who says her name is Lily Parker. She's asking for her mom. My heart stopped and started again in the same second. Is she okay? Is she hurt? She's not hurt, Mom, but she's pretty upset. Can you come get her? I'm on my way. Please don't let her out of your sight. Shellmart Gas and Church Services. I knew the place. It was a combination gas station and small chapel about 15 minutes from my house, the kind of roadside stop that served truckers and travelers passing through. Why would my parents take Lily to a gas station? The drive felt like the longest 15 minutes of my life. I kept thinking about Lily, probably scared and confused, wondering where I was, and why her grandparents had brought her to a random gas station. When I pulled into the parking lot, I could see her through the window of the little convenience store attached to the chapel. She was sitting on a plastic chair that was way too big for her, still wearing her school clothes, clutching her purple backpack like it was the only familiar thing in the world. The sight of her broke something inside me. Pastor Daniel met me at the door. He was an older man with kind eyes and calloused hands, the sort of person who probably helped stranded travelers and lost children more often than he should have to. She's been asking for you every 5 minutes, he said quietly. Keeps wanting to know if you're coming back for her. Coming back for her. As if I had been the one who left. Mommy. Lily's voice cracked as she saw me, and she launched herself into my arms with the kind of desperation that told me she hadn't been sure I was really coming. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Mommy's got you. I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her small body shake against mine. She was safe. She was okay, but something had been broken that couldn't be easily fixed. Grandma said you didn't want me anymore, Lily whispered against my shoulder. She said you were too busy with work to take care of me, and that's why they had to bring me here. The rage that shot through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. They hadn't just abandoned my daughter at a gas station. They had poisoned her mind with lies about my love for her. That's not true, Lily. That will never be true. Mommy will always want you. Always. But why did they leave me here? Why didn't you come with them? How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her grandparents used her as a weapon in an adult conflict? How do you tell a child that the people who are supposed to protect her decided to terrorize her instead? Grandma and Grandpa made a very bad choice, I said carefully. They were angry with Mommy about something that had nothing to do with you, and they did something that was wrong and scary. Pastor Daniel approached us gently. Ma'am, I need to tell you something. They left this for you. He handed me a folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, I opened it to find my mother's neat handwriting. Jessica needs to learn her priorities. A few hours of worry might teach her what family really means. A few hours of worry. They had planned this. They had deliberately taken my child, brought her to a gas station, and abandoned her there as punishment for my refusal to fund their investment scheme. There's something else, Pastor Daniel said quietly. I felt I should call the police. What happened here? It doesn't sit right with me. As if summoned by his words, I saw a police cruiser pulling into the parking lot. I called them when your parents first left the little girl here, Pastor Daniel explained. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. Grandparents don't usually drop off children at gas stations and then leave without explanation. Officer Harris was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She took one look at Lily clinging to me, and Pastor Daniel's concerned expression, and immediately understood that this wasn't a simple family misunderstanding. Can you tell me what happened here today? She asked. I explained about the school pickup, the unreturned phone calls, the threats my parents had made about consequences. I showed her the note they'd left, and I watched her expression harden as she read it. Ma'am, this isn't just emotional manipulation, Officer Harris said. This borders on child endangerment. Taking a minor from school without the custodial parent's permission and abandoning them at a gas station could be considered kidnapping and child abandonment. Kidnapping. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's exactly what it was. My parents had taken my daughter against my will and left her in an unsafe situation to punish me for making a financial decision they disagreed with. What are my options? I asked. You can file a police report. You can pursue charges. At minimum, we need to document this incident in case there are future problems. Future problems. The thought that this might not be the end of their retaliation made my stomach turn. Officer Harris knelt down to Lily's level. Hi there, sweetheart. Can you tell me what happened today after school? Lily looked at me for permission, and I nodded encouragingly. Grandma and Grandpa came to get me, she said in a small voice. They said Mommy was too busy to pick me up, and that I was going to stay with them for a while. How did that make you feel? Scared. I wanted my mommy, but they said she didn't want me right now because she had important work to do. Officer Harris's jaw tightened. And then what happened? We drove for a long time and then we stopped here. Grandpa talked to the nice man. She pointed to Pastor Daniel. And then they left. I asked when Mommy was coming, and Grandma said maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. They had left my 7-year-old daughter in a state of uncertainty about whether her own mother was going to abandon her. Thank you for being so brave and telling me what happened, Officer Harris said to Lily. Then she stood up and addressed me. Mrs. Parker, I strongly recommend filing a report. This behavior is concerning, and it needs to be documented. As we filled out paperwork at the police station an hour later, Lily curled up on my lap in a hard plastic chair. I tried to process what had happened. My parents, the people who had raised me, had kidnapped my daughter and traumatized her to teach me a lesson about family loyalty. They hadn't just crossed a line, they had obliterated it. Mommy, Lily said quietly while Officer Harris typed up our statement. Are Grandma and Grandpa bad people? How do you answer that question? How do you explain to a child that people can love you and hurt you at the same time? That family doesn't always mean safety. Grandma and Grandpa did a very bad thing today, I said carefully. Sometimes people we love make choices that hurt us, and when that happens, we have to protect ourselves. Are they going to take me away again? No, baby. I'm going to make sure that never happens again. I meant it. Whatever it took, whatever bridges I had to burn, whatever family relationships I had to sacrifice, my daughter would never again be used as a pawn in my parents' manipulation games. But as we drove home that night, Lily finally asleep in her car seat, I realized that the damage was already done. It wasn't just about the gas station or the few hours of fear. It was about the seed of doubt they had planted in my daughter's mind, about whether she was wanted, whether she was safe, whether the people who claimed to love her could be trusted. I had faced grief when Ethan died. I had faced financial stress and single parenthood and the challenge of building a life from scratch. But this was different. This was betrayal at a level I hadn't known was possible. My parents didn't just hurt me that day. They broke my daughter's trust in the world. They taught her that love could be weaponized, that safety was conditional, that family could be the source of your greatest fear. And they did it all to punish me for refusing to hand over $30,000 for an investment scheme that I already knew was a scam. As I carried Lily into our house and tucked her into her own bed, surrounded by her stuffed animals and nightlights and all the things that made her feel safe, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. I was done. Done with the manipulation, done with the emotional blackmail, done with trying to maintain relationships with people who would hurt a child to win an argument. My parents had played their final card, and they had lost everything. But I didn't know yet just how right I was about Secure Cash being a scam. I didn't know that within weeks, federal agents would be knocking on doors and making arrests. I didn't know that my parents' investment opportunity was about to become a federal case. And I didn't know that my sister Kayla had known all along exactly what she was selling to our family. Filing that police report was just the beginning. What I thought would be the end of a nightmare turned out to be the start of something much bigger and more complicated than I could have imagined. Within 48 hours of the gas station incident, Child Protective Services was at my door. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because when a child is abandoned by relatives and a police report is filed, CPS has to investigate to ensure the child's safety. The social worker, Maria Santos, was kind but thorough. She interviewed Lily separately, asking gentle questions about what had happened and how she felt. She inspected our home, reviewed my financial records, and spoke with Lily's teacher and pediatrician. Mrs. Parker, she said, after her investigation was complete, "It's clear that you're providing a safe and loving home for your daughter. However, given the traumatic nature of what happened, I'm recommending counseling for both you and Lily to help process this incident." Therapy. At 7 years old, my daughter needed therapy because her grandparents had decided to use her as a weapon in an adult conflict. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was a child psychologist who specialized in family trauma. Her office was filled with toys and art supplies designed to help kids express feelings they might not have words for yet. Lily's first drawing broke my heart. She drew herself as a tiny figure standing alone at a gas station, with two big figures walking away in the distance. Above the drawing, in her careful second-grade handwriting, she wrote, "Why did they leave me?" It's normal for children to blame themselves when adults behave unpredictably, Dr. Mitchell explained to me after Lily's session. She's trying to make sense of why people who supposedly love her would make her feel unsafe. That word, unsafe. My parents had made my daughter feel unsafe in the world. Dr. Mitchell recommended individual therapy for Lily and family therapy for both of us. She also suggested that I consider my own individual counseling to process not just this incident, but what she called the larger patterns of family dysfunction that had led to it. I was hesitant at first. I'd spent my whole life being told I was strong enough to handle anything. Therapy felt like admitting weakness, but watching Lily struggle with nightmares and separation anxiety convinced me that strength sometimes means asking for help. My own therapist, Dr. Rebecca Torres, helped me understand something I'd never been able to see clearly before I had grown up in an abusive household. Not physically abusive, but emotionally and psychologically abusive in ways that had shaped every relationship I'd ever had. Emotional abuse often gets overlooked because there are no visible bruises, Dr. Torres explained. But the damage is real. Constant criticism, emotional manipulation, Using children as weapons against each other, withholding love as punishment, these are all forms of abuse. It was during one of these therapy sessions that I got a phone call that changed everything. Is this Jessica Parker? The voice was unfamiliar older with a slight accent I couldn't place. Yes, who is this? My name is Maya Chen. I think I'm your aunt, your father's older sister. Aunt Maya. I had heard her name mentioned exactly twice in my entire childhood, both times in hushed tones, followed by my father saying she was difficult and had made her choices. I saw the news about what happened with your daughter, she continued, about Robert and Susan, leaving her at that gas station. I had to call you. News? I hadn't realized the incident had made it into any news coverage. How did you find my number? It wasn't easy. Your father and I haven't spoken in 15 years. But when I heard what they did to your little girl, Jessica, I need you to know something. You're not crazy. What they did to your daughter, they did the same thing to me decades ago. We met for coffee the next day at a small cafe in downtown Chicago. Maya was in her 60s with silver hair and intelligent eyes that reminded me of my father, but warmer somehow. I was the oldest child just like you, she began. Your father was the golden child just like Kayla. When I was 25 and engaged to be married, our parents demanded that I give them $10,000 for Robert's failed business venture. When I refused, they told my entire extended family that I was selfish and ungrateful. The story was eerily familiar, just with different details. But the worst part came when I had my first child, your cousin David. Our parents offered to babysit one weekend, and then they disappeared with him for 3 days. No phone calls returned, no explanation. When they finally brought him back, they said they were teaching me about family priorities. My blood ran cold. They did the same thing to you. Exactly the same pattern. Use a child as leverage to punish the parent for not complying with their demands. I cut them off completely after that. I moved across the country, changed my phone number, and built a life where they couldn't reach us. Why didn't anyone ever tell me about you? Because acknowledging my existence would mean acknowledging that it's possible to walk away from toxic family members. They've spent 36 years rewriting history to make me the villain in their story. Maya reached across the table and took my hand. Jessica, what they did to Lily wasn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. And if you don't break the cycle now, they'll do it again. That conversation gave me something I hadn't expected: validation. For the first time in my life, I had confirmation that my parents' behavior wasn't normal, wasn't acceptable, and wasn't something I had to endure. But the validation was nothing compared to what happened 2 weeks later. I was working in my home office when there was a sharp knock at my front door. Through the window, I could see a woman in a navy suit with a badge clipped to her belt. FBI. Mrs. Parker, I'm Agent Jennifer Kim with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We'd like to ask you some questions about Secure Cash and your family's involvement with the company. My heart started racing. Am I in trouble? No, ma'am, you're not under investigation, but we're hoping you can help us understand the recruitment practices that were used to target your family. Agent Kim explained that Secure Cash had been under federal investigation for months. It was a massive Ponzi scheme that had defrauded investors out of over $50 million across 6 states. The operation was more sophisticated than I had realized, with multiple levels of recruiters who earned bonuses for bringing in new investors. Your sister, Kayla Parker, was identified as a mid-level recruiter, Agent Kim said. She was responsible for bringing in at least 24 investors, including your parents. But she lost money too. She invested $5,000 of her own money. Mrs. Parker, your sister didn't lose money. She earned over $15,000 in recruitment bonuses. The $5,000 she claimed to invest was actually her first bonus payment, which she used to make her story more convincing to potential investors. The room started spinning. Kayla hadn't been a victim of the scam. She had been a perpetrator. Agent Kim showed me printed emails that had been recovered from the Secure Cash servers. messages between Kayla and her upline recruiters discussing the best ways to pressure family members into investing. One email dated just 3 days before Kayla showed up at my house made me physically sick. Family targets are the most valuable because they trust you and they're harder to cut off when they start asking questions. If sister doesn't invest, parents will pressure her. If that doesn't work, suggest they cut off access to granddaughter until she complies. Cut off access to granddaughter. The gas station incident wasn't a spontaneous punishment for my refusal to invest. It was a premeditated strategy that Kayla had suggested to our parents. "We'd like you to testify about the recruitment tactics that were used against you," Agent Kim said. "Your testimony could help us establish a pattern of exploitation and coercion." I agreed immediately, not just for justice, but because I wanted the whole truth on record. The federal investigation moved quickly. Within a month, arrests were being made across multiple states. The founder, Marcus Chen, was arrested at his home in California. Dozens of recruiters were charged with securities fraud and conspiracy. Kayla was offered a plea deal if she cooperated with the investigation and provided information about other recruiters. She refused, apparently believing that her lawyer could get her off on a technicality. It was around this time that my parents finally called me. "Jessica, we need to talk," my father said, his voice lacking the confidence it had held during our previous conversations. "This whole secure cash thing has gotten out of hand." Out of hand, as if a federal investigation was just a minor inconvenience. "What we really need to discuss," my mother added on the extension, "is getting past this misunderstanding about Lily. We think family therapy might be helpful." Family therapy. Now, they wanted to work things out when federal agents were asking questions and their investment had been exposed as a fraud. I agreed to one session. Not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I wanted to say what I needed to say in front of a professional witness. Dr. Patricia Wong was a family therapist who specialized in high-conflict situations. Her office was neutral territory with comfortable chairs arranged in a circle and a box of tissues strategically placed within reach of every seat. My parents arrived first looking older and more frail than I remembered. The stress of the investigation was showing on their faces. Kayla came in just behind me, accompanied by her lawyer who sat in the corner taking notes. "I want to thank everyone for being willing to participate in this process," Dr. Wong began. "Jessica, you requested this session. Would you like to start?" I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but sitting across from my parents and my sister seeing their expectant faces, I almost lost my nerve. Then I thought about Lily, about the drawing she'd made of herself standing alone at the gas station, and I found my voice. "I'm here to offer you a choice," I said, looking directly at my parents. "You can acknowledge what you did was wrong. You can commit to therapy, both individual and family counseling. You can accept supervised visits with Lily with boundaries and accountability. Or you can be out of our lives permanently." My father's face immediately hardened. "Jessica, you're being dramatic. We made one mistake." "You kidnapped my daughter," I interrupted. "You traumatized a 7-year-old child to punish me for making a responsible financial decision." "That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice." "We were trying to teach you about family loyalty," my mother said, her voice taking on that familiar tone of wounded righteousness. "Family loyalty." I stood up, my voice getting louder despite my efforts to stay calm. "You want to talk about family loyalty? Where was your loyalty when you used my daughter as a weapon? Where was your loyalty when you told her I didn't want her anymore?" "We never said that," my father protested. "She was 7 years old and you made her believe her mother had abandoned her. You broke her trust in the world to win an argument about a Ponzi scheme that Kayla knew was a fraud from the beginning." All eyes turned to Kayla, who had been silent up until this point. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something in her ear. "I can't discuss the ongoing federal case," Kayla said quietly. "You don't need to discuss the case," I said. "But you can discuss what you did to our family. You can apologize for manipulating our parents into targeting their granddaughter when I wouldn't give you money for a scam you were profiting from." Kayla looked at the floor. My parents looked confused and defensive. No one was taking responsibility for anything. "Here are my terms," I continued. "Individual therapy for both of you to address the patterns of emotional abuse and manipulation. family therapy to learn healthy communication. Supervised visits with Lily starting with 1 hour a month contingent on her comfort level and therapeutic progress. Full acknowledgement of what you did wrong with apologies to both me and Lily. The room was quiet for a long moment. That's ridiculous, my father said finally. We're not going to jump through hoops to see our own granddaughter. And we're certainly not going to sit through therapy to be told that loving our family is somehow abusive, my mother added. Dr. Wong tried to mediate, suggesting that perhaps we could start with smaller steps, build trust gradually. But my parents had already made their choice. They wanted access to Lily without accountability, forgiveness without change, relationship without responsibility. In that case, I said, standing up to leave, we're done. My father's voice followed me to the door. You'll regret this, Jessica. Family is all you have in the end. I turned back one last time. No, Dad. Healthy relationships are all you have in the end. Family is just DNA. Kayla was arrested 6 weeks later. The federal prosecutor had enough evidence to proceed without her cooperation, and her refusal to take the plea deal meant she was facing the maximum penalties. The local news covered her arrest, describing her as a local woman charged in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. My parents lost everything they had invested in secure cash. Their retirement savings, the equity they'd borrowed against their home, all of it gone. They never called to apologize. They never acknowledged what they had done to Lily. They just disappeared from our lives, as if we had never existed. For the first few months, I waited for them to reach out. I thought surely they would want to make things right, want to be part of Lily's life, want to rebuild some kind of relationship. But I was still thinking like someone who had grown up believing that family relationships were worth preserving at any cost. I was still thinking like someone who didn't understand that some people will choose their pride over their grandchildren, their image over their integrity, their comfort over change. Dr. Torres helped me understand that this outcome, as painful as it was actually a gift. You offered them a path back into your life, she said. You offered them multiple chances to make things right. They chose not to take those chances. That's valuable information about who they are and what they prioritize. The real healing began when I stopped waiting for them to change and started focusing on the family I was building for Lily. We moved to a new house in a different school district, not because we were running away, but because we were running towards something better. A fresh start in a place where no one knew our history, where Lily could make friends, whose grandparents were on topics of therapy sessions. Lily thrived in her new school. Her nightmares stopped. Her separation anxiety faded. She made friends easily and invited them over for play dates where the house was filled with laughter instead of tension. One evening, about a year after we'd moved, Lily was having dinner with us and my best friend Lena and her husband Marcus. Lena had been my friend since college, one of the few people who had never questioned my decision to cut contact with my parents. Mom, Lily said, suddenly, can Aunt Lena and Uncle Marcus be my official godparents? I looked across the table at Lena, who had tears in her eyes. What made you think of that, sweetheart? Well, Sarah at school was talking about how her godparents take her to Disney World and come to all her school plays and stuff. And I was thinking that Aunt Lena and Uncle Marcus already do all that stuff with me, so maybe they could be my official godparents. I think that's a wonderful idea, I said. We had a little ceremony the following month. Nothing fancy, just the four of us in our backyard, with Lily presenting Lena and Marcus with handmade certificates declaring them her chosen godparents. We planted a tree together to symbolize our commitment to growing as a family. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she said something that has stayed with me ever since. Mom, I'm glad we moved here. I'm glad it's just us and the people who really love us. How do you know who really loves us? Because they show up, she said, matter-of-factly. And they don't make you scared. Show up and don't make you scared. 7 years old, and she had already learned what it took me 36 years to understand. As I write this, it's been 3 years since that day at the gas station. Lily is 10 now, happy and confident, and surrounded by people who choose to be in her life because they want to be, not because they have to be. My parents sent a birthday card last year. No return address, no phone number, just a generic card with $20 inside and a note that said, "We miss you." I threw it away before Lily could see it, because missing someone and changing your behavior are two completely different things. Kayla served 18 months in federal prison and was released last spring. I heard through Maya that she moved to Florida and is working as a waitress. She's never reached out to apologize or try to make amends. I don't expect her to. Here's what I've learned from all of this. Family doesn't always mean forever, but chosen family, that's where forever begins. The people who show up for you when it's hard, who celebrate your successes without diminishing them, who protect your children instead of using them as weapons, those are your real family. DNA is just biology. Love is a choice that has to be made again and again, every single day. I used to think that cutting off my parents was the end of something. Now, I understand. It was the beginning of a life where Lily gets to grow up feeling safe and valued and unconditionally loved. The beginning of relationships based on mutual respect instead of obligation. The beginning of breaking generational patterns that should have been broken decades ago. If you're listening to this and recognizing patterns in your own family, I want you to know something. You have permission to protect yourself and your children. You have permission to demand better. You have permission to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they share your DNA. Family is supposed to be your safe place in the world. If it's not, you have the right to create a safe place for yourself. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is show people the door and let them choose whether or not they want to walk back through it. Changed. My door is still open, but the terms remain the same: accountability therapy and putting Lily's well-being first. After 3 years, I'm no longer holding my breath waiting for that call. But I'm no longer broken by the silence either, because the family I've built, the one that chose us and continues to choose us every day, is more than enough. It's everything. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to make the difficult choice between family loyalty and protecting yourself, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members? How did you find the courage to put your children's well-being first? Your stories matter, and sharing them helps others who might be going through similar situations. If you found value in this story, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for listening, and remember, you have the right to choose who gets to be part of your story.